Hello, my name is Tim Porter. I'm the writer and director of Juggling. Over the next couple of weeks, we're going to invite you into the psychological thinking of how this film has came to be, the influences and also the stages of how we've gone through production-wise to get to the finished product. This is essentially Behind the Madness with your host, Mr. Timothy Porter. Now for the first show, I've decided to invite on board the actor who will be playing Terry in the film. So I hope you will enjoy this 30-minute interview where we can begin to discuss and explore the themes that are within juggling, and also essentially what the characters' motivations are and what the broader context of everything in the film means to a greater extent, and what it will likely be for you guys to experience in the cinema, how we expect you to react to what you see on screen. So sit back, relax, and enjoy the fright. Okay then, let's kick off this interview. On the other end, we have
Arash Salimi, I'm playing the role of Terry in Juggling.
Excellent. How are you doing, mate, tonight?
Yeah, good, thanks. Without sounding cliche, just had an acting class. I just came back from that and had something to eat, so in good nick to crack on with the interview.
Oh, nice. Excellent. So, kicking off the interview, can you tell everyone about the process of how you got involved with this project?
Yeah, it was quite a random one, to be honest with you. I came across the advertisement for Juggling on Facebook, and I dropped him a line on the wall, basically with my Spotlight CV, and he actually messaged me back on my wall and asked if I wanted to have a chat on Skype. So we had a conversation, and it was quite mad, to be honest with you, because we had never spoken to each other before, but our first conversation ended up being over 2 hours long. And, I guess that boded well for things to come, because, the chemistry was there from the beginning. And, just basically over time, helping Tim out when he's needed some help and some in respect to do the film. And then having my audition for the film, and having the recall for it a couple of weeks later, which was in, I guess, mid-Jan. And yeah, just looking forward to filming, really.
Awesome, excellent. So, what attracted you to the project? Because, like you said, it was a random post that you saw. Yeah, so it's quite interesting.
Yeah, it was. I think the great thing about this film is that it's very original, and to be honest with you, in a time where, High School Musical 2 is a blockbuster, to work on an original project, like with original ideas and someone who's very passionate about what they do is, to be honest with you, very fortunate. What I really like about it, I mean, I love the whole faceless concept. You know, it kind of...
let me just stop you there. These people don't know about the faceless concept, so would you like to go into some detail of what facelessness connotes in this story?
Yeah, I mean, I guess I'll start it with how I relate what's in the story to what's in real life.
Yeah.
So, I mean, in the society that we live in now, if you look over the last 70 years, we've gone from a society which, you know, was very much more family orientated. You know, there was much more add value in everybody's role in society. You know, the baker was a baker, for example. Now, you know, you go to Morrison's and pick up the loaf of bread from the shelf. And what's basically happened is that over time, with the improvements in technology, people in society have become more like, you know, a digit on a balance sheet rather than that, you know, add value service, if you want to look at it from a work perspective, that people have provided in the past. So what happens is that they become almost faceless themselves, because you don't see that person who puts that loaf of bread on the shelf anymore, right? You don't. So you just see the loaf of bread there. You take it, go to the till. The till's not even the till anymore. You have those automatic ones. And again, so I guess what's happening is that all the stuff all the relationships that you used to build with even your local community, like the baker who you'd go and see every day, you know, it's not like that anymore. So it's almost like you end up with a faceless society. And when I read about the faceless part in relation to the film, it really it kind of drove home to me, because, you know, unfortunately that's the position that Andrew finds himself in. That, you know, he's trying to juggle both worlds, and because I guess to a certain extent the pressure he puts on himself is so extreme that, you know, he starts blanking these people's faces out. And not only that, I guess to a certain extent as well, which, you know, could be related as subtext to the film, that, you know, the way society is, like, Andrew's actually seeing that through his own eyes.
Very, very interesting. That's why I was just stunned there, listening to the delivery of that. Very passionate. It's very good. Okay, so we know a lot about Andrew now. Can you tell us a bit about your character Terry? What his role in society is?
Yeah, I mean, Terry and Andrew are best friends. You know, they've known each other since they were kids, and you know, it goes to the extent that Terry's the only person, like, who knows where Andrew lives. You know, he's almost like the bridge between the two worlds that Andrew's trying to juggle effectively, to handle. And, you know, so he's a very important person in Andrew's life. You know, in terms of his character traits, you know, he's very much a Jack the lad, you know, live for the moment, probably doesn't care too much about his perception in other people's eyes. Also, you know, he's one for getting one over with the ladies, so to speak. However, the thing is with Terry, you know, his heart's in the right place, and he doesn't do any of these things in a callous way. That's just who he is. You know, he's somebody who does just live in the moment, more so than Andrew, who's more of a deep thinker. And I guess that's the beauty of their friendship, because they, you know, maybe not at a conscious level, but definitely at a subconscious level, appreciate the different qualities that each of them bring, which, you know, opposites attract. And that, I believe, holds true for men and women, men and men, women and women. And, you know, that's why I think they have a strong friendship. You know, Terry's the kind of guy who can make Andrew loosen up, and Andrew's the kind of guy who can make Terry think about the consequences of some of the stuff he does or says sometimes, which is important as well. So yeah, I think that's about Terry, really.
Okay, interesting. So what do you think this film offers to an audience?
I think this film offers so many things to the audience because, I mean, first and foremost, right, let's just look at it from a superficial standpoint where, we live in such a consumerism society. So people want to see the results, right? Mm. So just from a kind of, so let's indulge them, right? So from a purely shots perspective, right? I mean, I've been lucky enough to see a few behind the scenes kind of shots that Tim and Co have as an idea for the film, and it's going to look spectacular, So just purely from a shots perspective, the film is going to look spectacular. Two, I think the underlying concepts in the film. So for me, they're really two. One, the faceless society, and two, the juggling, which not just Andrew does, but everybody in society does to a certain extent every day. I don't act the same with my parents as I do in a job interview. You basically, you adapt to each situation, right? So to a certain extent, right, you're juggling two different worlds, or effectively, the underlying of that, you're actually juggling two different personalities, right? Because I have this personality for the workplace, I have this personality with my family, I have this personality with my friends. And the thing is, right, if those two personalities, if there's a large disparity between them, then it becomes very laborious to actually, switch from one to the other. And that's where, you can almost see, an amount of juggling going on and the strain of having to be like that. For example, in a job interview, could start affecting your relationships with your family, for example. So, I think people will be able to relate to this, that, everyone's juggling on a daily basis, whether it's a schedule, whether it's relationships, it's something that people are going to be able to relate to and think, fuck, I've been in a situation like that, or I know someone who's in a situation like that, or, am I in a situation like that? Mm. It's going to make people think. And again, the faceless society, it's going to make people think as well, geez, it's true, we are living in a faceless society. And it's going to get more progressively like that. I mean, if you look in South Korea, they have the biggest investment in the robot industry in the world. It's a huge industry. I mean, they have actors which are robots in South Korea. I mean, I better get on this film quickly.
Exactly. Well, I can guarantee you, from a director's standpoint, I won't be employing robots anytime soon. I'm not George Lucas.
Okay, brilliant.
So that's not a problem. So yeah, I think a lot of people also at this moment, from an audience perspective, are questioning what form of genre this film is, and what kind of, if you had to choose one in particular, what kind of subgenre or genre would you categorise this film as? Or do you think it's a hybrid and it mixes other things?
I mean, that's a fantastic question. I actually think it's a hybrid of everything.
Okay.
Personally, there's definitely an element of horror, but it's kind of not like the horror film, I don't know, I Know What You Did Last Summer. There's something more where, I guess something even more like Shutter Island-esque.
What's this? Is it psychological horror?
Yes, exactly. There's that psychological horror element which gradually feeds through the film, which is great. There's also it's a drama. There's parts where there's it can really make you see like it's a drama style film. Again, I think from a shots perspective, Tree of Life, so that kind of film. I mean, there's even comic elements as well, sort of romantic elements as well, and that's why I think it has a bit of everything, and that's why it's a good film, because it's balanced. It's not just one way, because life is not one way. I'm not one way. Everybody. If you're one way, you're playing a role.
Yeah.
You're not. And this film reflects that really nicely.
That's very interesting. That's very interesting. So, also, I was going to quickly state here is this imagery. There's a lot of pictures online taken from the behind-the-scenes stuff, and there's a suggestion of hierarchy going on throughout that. And I was just wondering if you could, what your opinion is on that kind of imagery.
You mean in respect to hierarchy in terms of wealth, in terms of the imagery? Yeah,
in the imagery, like, for example, the shots of the skyscrapers, but in the same shot there's the graffiti everywhere, that kind of
exactly. I mean, that sums up juggling in, I don't even need to speak about that. I mean, look, that's what the government needs to juggle, right? You have this crisis where, bankers are being scrutinised for the amount of pay they're taking home, the lavish lifestyle they're living. And then you have at the other end of the extreme, like, extreme poverty in the UK. So, they're the government, effectively trying to juggle, or at least try and bridge that gap. And I think the shots depict wonderfully, like how far the gap, how big the gap actually is. And I think that's great about the film. Again, Andrew's working in, high-rise office block, but lives in a rundown council estate. It's not the typical, not the stereotype. You see what I mean? Most people who work in a high-rise office block probably live in quite a nice suburb in London. So again, he's juggling with that stress. Like, the stresses that, unfortunately exist in a rundown environment. Is he safe walking at home every night? Does he need to get changed when he leaves the office from his suit and tie to something, less standy-outish, excuse my Shakespeare. So when he does go home back to the estate, people are not going to pick on him.
Yeah.
It's all of these things which will, creep into the way people live.
Okay, that's quite interesting. So, I guess wrapping this up nearly, what are your opinions actually on the state of British cinema at the moment?
I think it's such a tough question. I mean,
yeah, that's a very tough question.
I mean, I think the problem is it's hard to look at just from one angle. I mean, unfortunately, if I compare, British cinema to what goes on in Hollywood, you can't compare, because, their whole work ethic is completely different out there. I might get blasted for saying this, but it's what I think. The work ethic in the States is much more serious out there. That's why they're much more successful. And, the state of British cinema is, from an underlying of reasons, from almost the mentality of the people in this country, is much more negative and pessimistic to those in America, where they have a very gung-ho attitude. So, and that's the problem, right? Because that's the thing which stems everything you do. Whether you're making films, whether you're an accountant, whether you're picking rubbish from the street, if your attitude is that different, right, it's going to affect everything you do. So, then you've got, then you have the actors. Again, the actors in the UK are very good, but, some people say better than America. However, is the work ethic the same? Probably not. You know, I've heard a lot from actors who've gone out to LA from England, and they say it's a completely different beast out there. So then you don't have the same, you know, enthusiasm, the same life that actor here is bringing to the screen as you do in the States. So that's another issue. Then you have investment, then you have, you know, ideas, you know. I mean, there are some original ideas from films coming here, but if I would compare it to the Far East, you know, I think the films they make are probably more interesting. You know, again, like, a big problem with British cinema is that, you know, it's failing on two fronts. At least in Hollywood, they're failing on one, right? They have big budgets, right? They can make, you know, spectacular crap films. But here, which appeal to the audiences they have, here they can't do that. So they end up making, you know, crap films which are tailored to the audience, what the audience want, rather than at least following, you know, not supplicating their art for what the audience wants and actually following that through.
I was just actually going to ask here that recently David Cameron came out and said something about how we need to make a mainstream English film society. You know, this whole idea of making films that reflect a certain demographic. But my own opinion, but I don't want this to alter what you're going to say, is essentially that most films made in Britain at the moment that are commercial anyway reflect not the greater interest of the general populace. It's either living in the past with the kind of, you know, heritage, you know, monarch imagery of kings and queens, costume drama and stuff like that. And then when independent filmmakers start to make their films, it always seems to go back down to the hoodie route and all of those kind of generic genre pictures, which have now become a staple and become a brand as well, we could say. So I don't know, to me, I in my opinion anyway, I don't know what you stand on this, but I think there's a serious lapse in British cinema of any sense of identity or any kind of key themes, because it's just completely sporadic.
Of course, and like, you know, it's a great point. Like you said, a lot of the independent, you know, from kidulthood, adulthood, Another Hood, Attack from the Block, Scare, you know, the list goes on. I'm not saying these are bad films, you know, they're not. But the thing is, right, there comes a point where, you know, are you making the film because you want to make it? Or are you making it for the outcome, i.e., you want to make it so the audience like it? No, because the thing is, right, if you make it because you want to make it, the fruit will always bear itself. But if you're doing it for, you know, an outcome, right, you're leaving yourself in such a weak position, because you don't know. Still, they might not like it, and you're basically outcome dependent. And, you know, again, yeah, I completely agree. British cinema has lost its identity because we're not original. You know, originality, you know, stems from, you know, from the individual. A character is, you know, a character can be defined about how you do what you do. If I start copying how I do things from Tim, for example, yeah, then, you know, I'm not Arash anymore. You know, so I lose my originality. Again, with films, if I see that, oh yeah, Kidulthood did well, right, let me make another 10 films like this and saturate it completely. You know, then you start losing. You see what I mean? You start losing it.
So it's quite interesting. You could say, going back to the beginning of this conversation, that British film industry is faceless.
Yes.
That's quite interesting. So yeah, I guess to wrap this up, what are your what do you want an audience to come away from with this movie?
You know, excuse my French, but I'd love the audience when they watch it, and I'll give an example. When I watched The Dark Knight, and I'll never forget this moment, there was a point in the film where the Joker sticks his head out the window, and it's fantastic, even direction from Christopher Nolan or whoever the DOP or whatever they did, where he stuck his head out the police car window, and they basically almost muted the sound, yeah, And the shot they did, it was like it almost slowed down time. Yeah? And I thought to myself, I actually stopped watching at that point and thought to myself, aloud in my head, I can't believe this film is this fucking good. And for me, all I can do is take care of my part, which is my acting for my role and my acting in terms of how I interact with the other actors in the film. But I hope that when people watch this, they have the exact same thought and think, oh my God, I can't believe this is that fucking good. This should be in the fucking cinema. And literally those words they're thinking. Because if they are thinking those words, then it means it's hitting home. The worst response would be no response. I'd rather somebody say they absolutely hated it than it was okay.
No, I think that's exactly what I think we're trying to do with this. Kind of like if we get no reaction, that's going to be like the final blow or something like that. But if we completely split the audience, then that would be a total success for me anyway. Because I'm not making an audience friendly picture here. At the end of the day, I'm just making what I want to make, and if people like it, they like it, and if they don't, well, that's it really. At the end of the day,
if everybody liked it or everybody didn't like it, it wouldn't be interesting. That's why it's good that people have their opinions anyway.
Exactly.
And I think that's why it'll be a success, because you're making it the way you want to make it.
Well, the one good thing is it's not watered down. It's very intense. And it doesn't, pull any punches. It's raw in that respect, and instead of just throwing one punch, it smashes you with about 7 uppercuts at the same time. So I just hope that people are ready for it, because it's going to be an intense ride.
Yeah, definitely. It's the exact kind of shake-up British cinema needs.
Oh, you're too kind.
No, it really is.
Well, we shall find out. So, the official release date, anyways, for the festivals will be around May. Shooting will be on the 4th to the 11th of March. And we shall be doing advanced test screenings around about April. So, people on this Facebook channel, stay locked. Because you might be invited to one of the first test screenings ever. Well, not even test screenings of this film.
Wow, nice.
And then the official public will probably see it if they go to some film festivals between May and December, and possibly up until the next summer the year after. But we shall also be doing some form of online distribution in the next time. But actually, before we actually conclude this, there's a current WeFund.com application thing going on right now that we're trying to raise external money for, to kind of secure the budget and stuff. We all know times are tough and recession and stuff like that. But is there any thoughts you could give to potential investors out there for this project? Yeah,
I mean, look, you're not just investing in this film, so to say. Like you're investing in change. I know Tim personally, so it's easier for me to say, but he's somebody who's very passionate about what he does. I mean, how many, just from an actor's perspective, how many people do you know who are actually hosting these kind of interviews for short films they're producing? If I was an audience in front of me now conducting this interview, I'm sure I would be hearing silence. I mean, that's just to one extent, So if the director is putting this much effort there, just in terms of, I guess, pre-film publicity, just imagine what kind of effort he's going to put in terms of filming this. Really, and this is for a short. Just imagine.
And they don't even know about consequences of silence yet.
Exactly.
Yeah, which we're not even going to say anything on this.
Because there will be consequences.
There will be consequences. Exactly. And with all of my films, there are consequences for people's actions. So, Just bear that in mind, people. So, okay, well, thank you, everyone, for listening to this. This is Tim Porter signing off.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Tim, for the interview.
That's okay, no worries. And we look forward to seeing you as Terry in the near future.
Yeah, brilliant.
Excellent. Thank you for your time.
Take care, mate.
Bye-bye.
Thanks. Bye.